Takaranto. Takaranto is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands, and this territory is also covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the lands and the resources around the Great Lakes. I think that it's important to also acknowledge that these lands also, and the history of Canada is also informed very much and a part of the realities and the resistance of displaced Indigenous peoples of the African continent, who through enslavement and subjugation to colonial violence were forced and coerced into migration on these lands, and have also shared and been a part of this story, of this Canadian story for many years. So in my time, I've come to understand, and through the teachings of many people, that in fact, the Dish with One Spoon wampum belts, that agreement certainly represents how we can all eat from this dish, right? That is this land, in fact, that we're on, and share the spoon, in fact, without having to cut. There are no knives in this dish, right? That are meant to cut and divide, but that in fact we can all be here to thrive in what we understood there was enough for all of us. So it felt important to really ground us into thinking about this project, the Toronto Impact Initiative, what it means to build and create something new from what already is existing here. All of us here, good energy, positive thinking, and somehow guided by this idea that we're building something into the future. I think it's also important for me to just kind of acknowledge that this work also kind of hosted today by North York Community House, which is an agency that sits in Lawrence Heights community, is also on these lands and also going through changes, redevelopment, significant redevelopments as we kind of build this community into the future. And so all of that to me kind of really just represents what it means for us to be here building together, building a future together, right? And that future is limitless and is within it contains everything that we offer and that we bring into it, and for it to continue to grow, to feed us for generations to come. So yes, thank you for the chance to do that. I must say, and also just acknowledge that parts of that, a large part of that land acknowledgement has been prepared by Lawrence Heights elder and community knowledge keeper Denise Bishop Earl. I know she was here for the first conversation, so I really just want to also acknowledge that much of that is her love and nurture assembled together to share with you. So Renzel, what do you think? Can I give it back to you now?
Thanks so much, Kadeen, for that great acknowledgement. And the shout out, of course, to the Lawrence Heights community, which we're all very close and really want and encourage their involvement as we move forward. And as Katie mentioned, in the spirit of the Wampum Belt Accord, we want to share. We want to share faithfully and fruitfully amongst all of us, especially today as we move forward. And I tell you a bit about the Toronto Impact Initiative. And Carla is my colleague here at Toronto Impact Initiative. And Katie, if you want to as well, we'll be monitoring the chat for any questions as I go through my presentation. Please feel free. Post your questions in the chat. The questions will be monitored. And we also have a structured Q&A session at the end where you can open up unmute yourselves and we can have a discussion as well. So without further ado, Carla will be advancing the slides. And so I think we should, yeah, 109, we're right on time. Okay. So what is the Toronto Impact Initiative? Here's a word cloud. As I look to Carla, she's not big on the word clouds, but just, Carla, I was wondering if you could introduce yourself first. I'll introduce myself and then we'll move right in. So.
Okay,
Carla.
great. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you, Katie. Perfect. So, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited about our meeting today. Let me introduce myself. I'm Carla. I'm from Ecuador. I am an economist with a master in corporate finance. And now I'm studying social service work for immigrants and for refugees. The last 15 years, I worked with the communities in Latin America and in the Caribbean. And I have been working with Randy for the last months to create this kind of space with the community. And how Randy said before, today I will be supporting you with a question about Toronto Impact Initiative. So please feel free to raise your hand or send a question to the chat. I will be aware. So thank you, and thanks for sharing with us today.
Okay, thanks, Carla. A little bit about me. I've been working in the nonprofit sector close to 20 years now. Wow. And I just want to cut to the chase. I really think there's a binary or some sort of a binarism that really cuts through and defines the sector somewhat. This binary, it cuts the sector between service providers on the one hand and advocacy on the other. Of course, you can do both, and many organizations take this on. I remember years ago, I was working at the West Neighborhood House, formerly St. Christopher House, watching Susan Piggott and John Sutherland and Sandy Burney lead the advocacy around the increased social provisioning to seniors, to unemployed, ODSP payments. It happens. So I've also worked in my career at Scadden Court. I've worked at Springboard Services. I've worked at Geneva Center for Autism. I've spent some time at the Responsible Gambling Council. Somewhat most recently at the Ontario Nonprofit Network, but most recently at the Social Innovation Canada. And that's where I really, so I've seen this binary between social provision and advocacy play out. I'm now in the sort of really in the latter part of my career, and my heart, I have to tell you, my heart lands solidly in advocacy, particularly community advocacy. And the Toronto Impact Initiative is the project that I'm managing. And it's a project that I want to talk to you about today. So these are the keywords, that describe what we're going to do. Some of the important terms that are going to guide us in our work moving forward. So I would also say it would be a general reflection of our ethic and our approach. So today we're going to talk about community, loans, and really we want to change the narrative about how traditional loans and finance are carried out and practiced. Next slide, please. So let's read the slide together. Design a community-based social finance model that validates and builds upon the issues, the concerns, perspectives of those that have been traditionally been shut out by mainstream finance. So having said that, so a Toronto Impact Initiative, our North Star, the general idea and sort of the framing that we adopt for this fund, it's taken from the Boston Impact Initiative. You can feel free to Google that. The Boston Impact Initiative, or BII, they're 10 years old and they're working towards really reducing the racialized wealth gap in Massachusetts area through community-based investing. So next slide here. The community, these community loans. So as you see, triple bottom line, people, planet, emphasize before profits. Loans for and by the community. You know, yes, they're repayable, but just as importantly, on the terms, you know, the community dictates. There, in a nutshell. Next slide there. I need to underscore really though, this important point here. The Toronto Impact Initiative, it's proudly a work in progress. We're currently really just in the process of building something. And that something's guiding question is this. Okay, what would investment into communities look like if those very communities were part of the process? So hopefully just hope you're all settled in now. And I just want to take a quick moment for you to think about this, you know, and I think we should take just a quick 3 minutes here. You could either unmute, or Carla's in the chat if you want to put your thoughts in the chat. But what would investment in communities look like if these very communities were part of the process? Please take a moment to feel, to reflect, and feel free to put your thoughts in the chat or unmute, please. Talk to us. Don't worry if you collide with someone, you know, we'll work it out. So I'm just going to stop talking now and Jay, you oh, sorry.
Could you? No, sorry, go.
I see Jay. Jay, go ahead.
Unmute. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone has had a productive day so far. So 2 things I just, you know, need to say was, first of all, you were talking about loans and finances, and my perspective is that there's more than enough money for everybody to live without being deprived. And I usually look at that guaranteed income is something that benefits everyone. When people have guaranteed incomes, they start businesses, they go back to school. There's a lot of stuff that they do with it. So for me, that's my spiel for guaranteed income. But also, I just wanted to comment and say that communities are always works in progress, because you were saying that, you know, that this impact thing is a work in progress, but human communities, human lives, it's always a work in progress, because as we live, we learn more, we do more, and we're not static, we're humans, you know, and communities build and continue to make progress, right? Sometimes not in the right direction, but nevertheless, it's always a work in progress. And that's all I have to say. Sorry to be so chatty and so long, but I just needed to express myself. Thank you very much.
No, that's quite all right. Yes, community is always active, communities in progress. We're trying to capture that too. We're trying to capture that activity, trying to capture the knowledge and the experience and the expertise of communities. And we're trying to reflect that in the design of what we're trying to move forward with. So thank you, Jael. Anything in the chat, Carla?
We have a comment in the chat if you want to.
Okay, go ahead, read it out.
Go you, Randy.
I put that in chat. I can say it if you want. Hi, Randy. So I just put in that if communities are part of the investment process, investment would be tied to benefiting those who need it most as determined by that community. And I think that the initiative that you have is fantastic in that it aims to incorporate those voices and aiming to reach those who are most marginalized as according to those communities. When they're a part of that process and co-design, it can be iterative. It doesn't have to go in just a linear direction. It can go back and forth. It can go in a circle. It can make progress in whatever way is determined as progress. And it doesn't always have to be just from one point to the next point. But yeah, thanks so much for this opportunity to say so.
Thank you.
And we have another hand.
Okay.
Tim, please.
Hey, thanks so much. Happy to be here. I think kind of two things come to mind. I think Suzanne's spot on that in terms of the investments themselves would go towards, I think, more impactful, more beneficial areas. Rather than, I think right now, you know, when it's kind of at the whims of the investors to decide where to go, you end up with a lot of sort of like pet projects or the sort of like, you know, project du jour if people are worried about climate change this week or affordable housing next week. Whereas, you know, I think people in the community really understand, you know, the needs a lot better. And the number two, from a practical standpoint, is I think that the terms would be more concessionary, frankly, that right now I think a lot of the investment terms are decided by the investors. And so when we're determining things like the rate of return on an impact investment, it's kind of like, well, how much did the investors need to get paid? The intermediaries take their cut, you know, that is very much driven by, I think, that top-down perspective. Whereas I think if it were the communities themselves, they would say, listen, like, this is the most interest we can reasonably pay, and that might not be as high as what the investors would want to receive.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Exactly. I'm just got my eye on the time. I just want to move forward, but please feel free to put your thoughts, questions in the chat. We'll take them up at the Q&A later. But I just want to move on to what the heck is this? So it's a possible example, but this is a metaphor, okay? This is just a visual metaphor. It's not a financial measurement tool, okay? I ripped it off of Boston Impact Initiative. It resembles, you know, those old stereo equalizers. You know, you had the bass and the treble, and you could move it from 0 to 10 or down 10 each time. So this is what we call the impact equalizer, let's call it. And you have the finance metric on the very far left, but you also have the environmental, social, and governance metrics. And what we want to do, this is important, is we want to see them in relationship to each other. So we have Sweet Tea's Bakery here. So on the financial risk, do you have your?
Yep.
Yeah. So just taking the financial piece here, the space between two dots is really the amplitude of the risk. So between, let's say, you see the 3% return, and there's a possibility you might go below 0, and you get a negative return. Okay, that's the financial risk. But let's move over to the right here. The environmental, Sweet Tea's Bakery, totally into sustainable sourcing. The bakery, let's say they would prioritize sourcing ingredients from local, organic, sustainable suppliers. They're really into waste reduction. I mean, they're implementing sort of, you know, some strategies to minimize the waste, such as the composting the food scraps, biodegradable packaging. You know, so they might be a bit slow getting a bit to the biodegradable packaging, but they're confident this will happen. She might be having trouble sourcing at first. So there's a bit of a small amplitude of risk here, but small. Let's look at the social. Under the social, Sweet Tea's Bakeries want to sponsor more community events, participate in food, possibly food donation programs. She wants to hire from the local community. Right now, though, she's hiring friends and family, but she's really looking outwards to the community as she grows. Hence, okay, a bit of a small risk here, small amplitude, but nevertheless, you know, she's growing in that direction. Now here under governance, okay, governance around implementing more transparent, you know, ethical governance practices, including, you know, maybe clear communication with stakeholders. Maybe we suggested, you know, having a stronger worker community representation on her board. And so in this case, the governance piece may be a bit slow, maybe a 1 step forward, 2 steps backward. So that explains the larger amplitude of risk here possible, yeah. So in a nutshell, though, this shows really the important relationship between the financial and the environmental, social, and governance. And personally, I'm willing to take a risk on the financial because we're going to get a return across our core impact metrics. We're going to get a return across our core social impact metrics, more or less. So really just wanted to show you this as a good illustration of how, really how we can think about the relationship, the interconnection between financial risk and return and impact risk and return across whatever dimensions you have. I mean, you can customize the dimensions to better suit your work. Environmental, I think BII has relabeled it climate resiliency. The social, they've relabeled it reducing the racial wealth gap. Ours could be, the social could be more around community development. The governments, we could change it to, more BIPOC and intersectionality. But nevertheless, that is our impact metrics, meant to underscore not just financial return. You got to see, even if it's a negative, even if you get a negative 80 cents on the dollar on your return, let's say it goes below zero. Look at the social impact you're making. That's the relationship we want to really emphasize moving forward. So, speaking of which, this is the Toronto Social Impact Investor Scene. It's a real scene. They met back in March. And this meeting was at Mars, the Mars building at college and university. They're talking about blending finance and catalytic capital and connecting, investable opportunities with funds. Note the bottom 2 pictures here, though. There's a whiteboard that captures their ideas. Okay, they're proud of this whiteboard. They pose beside it. And the big screen in the bottom right-hand corner. What does that they're showing to the meeting? What does the title of that screen say? Well, we got that in our screen capture. It's called Blended and Catalytic Capital Financing Systems Change. Their words, not ours. Okay, financing systems change. So this is the whiteboard. They put it together. They're talking community. But do they know community? And if my feeling is if we don't intervene, as if we don't intervene, they'll go ahead and define community for us. So here's another important point here that I think this brings up, that social finance, it's not merely about the financing of social, cultural, or environmental initiatives per se. I mean, there's already a significant amount of which it's already being carried out by mainstream financial institutions. And nor is social finance really about money flowing in a more quote unquote, social impactful way. Our take on it is that social finance it's really about developing a new paradigm of finance where investment decisions really are based on, values and really more assessed in a holistic way, like we just showed you at the Sweet Teas Bakery, taking into account planet and its people as well as profit. So it's a paradigm change, and we want community to lead the charge here. Real successful examples, right? This is already happening. Successful examples of how social finance working in the community. Kensington Community Land Trust, they've already got a community bonds raising. They've issued community bonds, intent on raising up to $2 million to acquire a second property in the Kensington market for long-term community benefit. There's also Sketch, that some of you may know, IndieGraph. Now, these are two really successful social finance success stories, and they've been profiled on Social Innovation Canada website under the tab What Works. And then there's Thrive. Thrive is a successful fund in British Columbia, and they're working closely with an organization called Purposeful People with a really strong community connection. And they've agreed to present their fund at our June or July community of practice, but stay tuned. Stay tuned on that. Okay, we're making good time here. So next slide, the circle slide. Okay, how are we going to develop or build the Toronto Impact Initiative? Well, we want to know more about communities. We're going through the community of practice model. Communities, they know their needs best. The community of practice sort of is our way of reaching the community, making real effective, it'll be mutual relationship building. You know, on the one hand, we can say a lot more of teach about social finance, but communities can contribute again, their knowledge, their needs, their challenges, the gaps, a real mutual relationship of trust. What else here? May, June, July will be 4 community sessions. We see them as online, 90 minutes each, but it's truly a co-design process with the community.
Randy, sorry, I just want to mention comments that we have on the chat from Diana and Nita. Thank you so much for your comments. They are talking about how important is work with the community and by the community, not just to have a consulting process. We need we need your support, the support of the community to understand the real needs and create this fund to get a real impact in the communities.
Thank you. Important comments. We're not consultants. We're not consulting the communities. I think that speaks for itself. This is not about consulting in any way whatsoever. It's a much deeper process than that. I've 20 years in the sector. I've seen a number of iterations of success and non-success, and so I'm pretty confident of how we can move forward with this. But we're going to. The hard piece is involving the community, getting the community over the trauma of being ignored, bullied, overlooked by traditional finance. That's the challenge, and getting them over that hump and really working with them to get the voices heard. And in a very substantive way, a piece of this design process reflects that as well. So still making good time here. Our timeline here, here's the lay of the land moving forward. I think you should go back to second. Did everyone see that one? Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, this speaks for itself in terms of the 3 information sessions. We're still working on those. Well, hopefully we can get 4, a bit more on the next slide on community of practice, and then a design session. Yeah, thanks, Carla. June 5th, please join us. We really start to dive into a community-based social finance model. This is largely an overview of well, we hope to cover overview of different community interventions into the social finance space. Maybe map a general plan moving forward. But as I mentioned, especially with this first one, we want to underscore that the overriding theme.
Community social finance, June 5th.
Is really tapping into community intelligence, respecting, you know, community knowledge in the design of this fund. So please join us June 5th. More information coming out on that. So here we're building on our learnings. Building on our learnings from previous, we're talking about possible target markets here. Maybe key sectors, community sectors for investments. Reviewing, speaking to, discussing broad community investment principles for the fund. What are our principles for the fund? What are criteria, investment criteria for the fund from a community perspective? That'd be June 19th. And of course, the knowledge that we gain from here, it goes towards an iteration of the design that we'll bring to the next community of practice on July 10th, I believe. Yeah, July 10th. And again, these community practices, they're serial in nature. So we're building off each successive session, I guess you could say, and we'll try to iterate and we'll really try hard to iterate and show rough prototypes of the fund design moving forward for feedback and for further work. Sort of, really have a developmental evaluation type of feel to the community of practice, at least from our side. And then July 24th, our final session where a more advanced framework is developed, shown. It's still a rough draft, but we're going to show it here for feedback. And then from this feedback, as we iterate again, we'll take it to a final design session and then kind of a summit where we release the core design document with the community right at our side then. And so that roughly, I know it's very impressionistic in general, but really until we start engaging, we really don't have more of a concrete type of outline in place. But I think that's a positive, not a negative. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to let Carla take more.
Okay, thank you, Randy, for your presentation. Before to continue with your questions, I'm going to share a survey link on the chat. Let me copy on the chat, please. Okay. That's it. We appreciate your response. Just 3 questions. We are going to take 2 minutes to respond, and then we could continue with your question, please. So click on the link and help us with this information. If you have any problem with the link, please let me know and I could share a code too.
We're ahead. 20 minutes. Please feel free on the third part to fill in your thoughts. Okay, so. That's not bad. Okay, I want to thank everyone for filling that out. Thank you, Cuddy. J to everyone, we're processing dense information. Cannot have instant response. So feel free then to revisit the survey and there's a text box you could fill for a response that comes to you later in the night, Jay, and everyone else. So I guess we can move to the Carla, the next. Here's the Q&A session, and we've got plenty of time for this. If people want to unmute, share their thoughts, really. It's an open session, and we're just beginning here, so there's no preordained processes or structures in place at all. We'd love to hear any ideas, comments, suggestions, criticisms, stories that you may have. I love to pick on Lambrina, just for old time's sake. Lambrina, could you unmute and just? No, I see you there. But anyone else? It's just Lambrina and I go back to St. Christopher House, West Neighborhood House. She must have a lot of tabs open. That's why. I'm not sure. We do. Oh, anybody else? That's funny. I thought is anybody?
Sorry, Randall, I'm off. I'm on speaker now. Sorry, my mouse was stuck. So you said you wanted to pick on me?
Yes, and it wouldn't be the first time, right?
No, I won't share any stories that go back.
Yes, okay. So your thoughts, I'm sure you have some thoughts about all of this, Lambrina.
Well, I think it's important. I was just putting in the chat that the whole co-creation collaboration with the community is critical to have meaningful inclusion, that it's not just about, oh, we got to check off those boxes, but I think where people actually feel validated and heard and it's meaningful, but it's, involving the community in design and change strategies, but working collaboratively with multiple stakeholders in a creative setting that puts everyone on equal playing field. I think when you use creative strategies and maybe not as academic, not just, people are at different education levels, income, literacy. So I think using creative ways that everyone can co-design and co-collaborate together with multiple stakeholders. I think that's really important. And giving people leadership roles, meaningful leadership roles.
Yeah. Good point. Thank you, Lambrina. Yes. Mhm. Thank you, Lambrina.
I was just gonna share, just before this meeting, we were on with our new architects because our location at Dundas and Ossington at West Neighborhood House, we're going to redevelop that. So we're just embarking on what process do we want to take. So our initial step is going to be, at our June AGM, the architects thinking about some kind of a small exercise or an intro first to our members at our AGM, and then embarking on a real community consultation as to what will we be thinking about when we redevelop that space for affordable housing.
Wow, there's some news there. Thanks for that, Lambrina.
Thank you. Diana, could you
Hi,
unmute, please? Yeah, great.
hi. Sorry, Randy, if you covered this in your presentation. Do we get to know who the investors are while we're co-designing?
The investors, no, that's a good question because we're actively promoting this, even at this stage, to investors
Okay,
right now. So it's kind of a mixed bag. It's really, and it changes almost daily in terms of the outreach that Wayne Miranda, feel free to Google him, Wayne Miranda. That's his project. I'm tasked with the community outreach, and Wayne is tasked with the investors. He has some investors already on board,
Mm,
and he's still actively seeking out more.
okay.
I'm sure that we'll know the investors when we start with the co-design. It's just in terms of transparency,
Mhm.
right? And so, good question, and I'm sure that once we get a concrete sort of feedback and commitment, we can go ahead and name names for sure.
Well, thank you.
Okay, Susanna, could you please unmute? Yeah.
Hi, thanks. I had a question, and it sounds like a really great initiative. I'm excited to be able to stay in touch and hopefully be part of the process here. So looking at some of these goals from the previous slides about, what social finance means to communities, for example, and exploring some of those needs when it comes to social finance, I was wondering, what is the plan to get everybody on the same page in terms of starting from a place of having the similar knowledge about the social finance ecosystem? And I ask that because my project for the last few months, 6 months prior to my current position was alongside Wayne and developing the social finance info hub, demand side info hub, which now is held with Wayne and the wholesalers with the land. Specifically trying to develop resources to get everybody on the same page about what social finance is. Some of the research that we had done demonstrates that social finance is something that means different things to different people. And sometimes folks are already doing this work in their communities, but it might be known as different terms in different regions, sectors, demographics. That was one of the challenges that we came up against, was trying to get everybody on the same page and understanding a knowledge base about social finance. It's okay if you don't have an answer to this just yet, but I just wanted to flag that for us, that was definitely a challenge.
Yeah, thanks for that. If I could quickly add, thanks, Susanna. Great questions. Getting everyone on the same page, meaning everyone, the community's on the same page. Forgive me for, I may be assuming too much, but when we go to communities and ask them what their needs are, what are their challenges, how have they been screwed over by traditional finance in terms of being ignored, in terms of individual local businesses not getting the type of finance backing that they need because of the screens put in place by traditional finance? I don't know. I'm assuming we're going to get maybe not identical stories, but community stories that all sort of trend towards some big themes that we could, you know, parlay into different buckets, but nevertheless, different buckets that everyone can agree on are, yes, these are the community themes that are really pressing and that we need to move forward with. Having said that, that was very broad. Community of practice. These are the sort of the hotbed of workshops, 90 minutes that we're really going to have to get down with community. And speaking back to Lambrina's earlier point, we've really got to turn it over to community and really help them. Yes, get on the same page, listen to them. It's up to us to take it away and see what were the commonalities, what are some of the strictures that may separate, and work with that and bring it to the next community practice. Say, this is what is brought up. This may be a sticking point. I don't think we can put this in the parking lot anymore. We've got to bring this out and talk about it. So I'm hoping through the community of practice sessions, we have 4 90-minute sessions that we can work these out with the community. As far as resources, yes, but resources are also very important too, just from an educational point of view. And Cuddy Duncan, who's working with us, is really quite the expert in terms of how we can use resources in terms of video, the different types of formats, and then how we can even bring community in, whether in person or in a hybrid setting, to further discuss. So we've got some ideas to make sure that, yes, that A, we hear the community voice, but B, to attend to, yeah, a lot of those really key issues you brought up, Susanna, and to continue the discussion with you, Susanna, and take your feedback as we move along. It's really important.
Thank you, Susanna. Yeah, Tim, raise your hand.
Sure, thank you. I think one suggestion that I'll make is just to keep it really focused in terms of the sort of different social finance instruments that we are using. I saw, looking at Boston Impact, that it really is exclusively sort of like, you know, early stage startup capital, kind of in this idea of venture capital, private equity. I know in social finance, we like just even on your examples page, Randall, where you listed like community bonds and, you know, Thrive, which is different, and then equity fund. And oh my goodness, like the amount of time I have to spend explaining the difference between like debt versus equity, and then all these little nuances is where people get overwhelmed and very much lost. So, you know, my suggestion to this is to really keep it very narrowly focused on one type of sort of investment structure or offering that you're doing. Just, I think that would go so far in terms of reducing confusion on that matter.
Thank you. Yeah, that speaks well to Susanna's point as well. I take both of your points, yes. And
it's just, it gets nerdy really fast. And like for some of us, like we like getting nerdy. Like Susanna, I'm seeing you,
and I could
like we can go nerdy, right? And it's just like, and some of us want to go there and do that. But I think especially, you know, when we're talking about community, and especially this like entry point where this is the first time, I just see it all the time where once someone gets overwhelmed, it kind of gets shut off, and that, so keeping it narrow, keeping it focused on sort of one thing, and then just being really conscious that if we are having resources, getting people on the same page, doing educational stuff, like we can't be condescending with this. You know, I think that so often like that is kind of that power dynamic, and it can become tricky with finance. Power dynamics are embedded throughout the entire process. So, you know, just making sure that we are, you know, really, I think, keeping it simple and keeping it as narrowly defined as possible.
Tim, thank you. Are you at CSI at all, Tim? I'd love to have a coffee with you next time you're there.
We can set that up. I'm not getting in. I haven't been into the space as much as I'd like, but Randall, if there's coffee with you on the table, I'll bike in. That's my excuse.
Great. Yeah, very important points. Thanks. Thanks to both of you for that. Mhm. Mhm.
Anyone has another question or comment?
Mhm. Okay, 1:55, and that's
Yeah.
we're right on time. So
Yeah.
thanks, everyone. Very important. We're looking forward to the survey and your comments in the survey. Thanks a lot, and I hope we see you again soon. Now, closing remarks over. Katie, I'm very interested in your closing remarks, so we'll turn it over to you, Katie.
No, thank you so much. I can just feel the energy that is generated today by the comments in the chat, the questions that are being asked, and of course, just interest in what this actually could be, like the potential and the possibility for it already feels tremendous. So I'm actually just wondering though, Randall, because maybe, and in case I missed it, it could be really helpful to let everybody know before we leave today, like what to expect, because you gave some specific dates for community of practice sessions, and literally we're about a month out from the first session that's scheduled for June 5th. So maybe you can just let everybody know, like, how can they participate? There were some questions in the chat about them being online or in person. Will there be recorded sessions? I think that might be a great way to just wrap up and let folks know what to expect over the next few weeks.
Wow, that's okay. The next few weeks, we still have planned some information sessions. I will be going to Scarborough. And holding an in-person information session with, I believe there's like Impacting Communities. I don't know, is Impacting Communities still here? There's somebody from there that I'll be working with Impacting Communities in Scarborough to do an information session there. Working with Cuddy Duncan on some interesting resources, particularly a podcast. Again, back to Susanna's earlier intervention about what education, what resources to get people sort of informed and on the same page about the basics of SF, the social finance, without getting nerdy. That's a good point, because I can really fall into that so easily. People have told me countless times. So yes, there'll be podcasts, there'll be information sessions. Carla, am I missing anything? And we have, yes, we'll probably have another in-person session, probably in North York as well. And yeah.
How will people be able to sign up for the community of practice sessions if they're interested?
Oh, I surely hope so. Yes, we'll be sending out the link to that very soon.
Awesome. And I'm wondering if there are any final comments, maybe any just closing thoughts, or how are you leaving? Maybe how are you leaving this hour presentation space at just about 2 p.m.? Just 2 minutes out of 2 p.m. I'm wondering if anybody would like to. All right, Lambrina put inspired. Thanks, Lambrina. Awesome. Any other comments? I'm certainly curious. I'm just so interested right now in what this process and what the experience will be like to actually, learn. I'm a community member, so certainly understanding the world of finance and what this brings to our community feels awesome. Lambrina also added hopeful. Someone's put insightful.
Oh, Diana, yes. Tim Nash, encourage. Good. Jaya, positive change. Yes, Jaya.
Awesome.
Feels like a good start. Thank you. We need the support from everyone. So hope to see you all and hear from you all again. So thanks.
Thanks, everyone. This is great.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care now.
Okay,
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Mhm.
Thanks, Randall.
Thanks. No, Katie, stay on.
Thanks.
Was that Lambrina?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just
Sabrina.
thanks, Kadeen. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Lambrina. Talk soon,
Okay.
huh?
Yeah, okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
So I was just gonna say, I don't know, Randall, if you know, I am in a new role at the house.
Oh,
So I'm now, I think I may have froze, but I oversee community relations. So that's donors and funding and fundraising, but it's also all our space and buildings and using our space differently. So we're just embarking, Gerstein Crisis Team is going to be coming to Dundas and Ossington and going to be a new tenant in our space.
Wow.
So it's also about sharing our space differently with other community partners.
all right.
Yeah, so they're going to be in remember the old music school with the center
Yes.
area and 6 classrooms?
Right.
They're going to be in that whole area. They're 24/7 crisis team that goes out to the community.
Oh, fantastic.
Anyway, so I'd love to talk more about
Yes.
redevelopment, but also I went to the conference in Detroit in October. It's fascinating how community groups use their space.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which
Like
is really important now, especially in Toronto, where the spaces are drying up.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm frozen, but lastly, because I know you all have to debrief, but the last thing is I'm on a board in Oakville, an Oak Park Neighborhood Center. We actually have a lockbox on our front door, and so many different community groups use our space, like for children's programming, like not programs we're delivering, but other external partners that use the space because the neighborhood house belongs to the community. So it's shifting mindset as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
anyways, I'll let you debrief. Nice to see you all.
Yeah, we'll be in touch,
Taking care.
Lambrina. Thanks
Yes,
for coming.
absolutely. Okay, thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye, Lambrina. Yeah.
Mhm. Great. Great. We still have participants. Anyone want to pipe up? Who's ever out there still? Gia? Ma? No? How many more? No? Okay, this happens. Okay, have you stopped the recording? You can stop it now.